Welcome to the Doom Scroll News Report here on Radio Taiwan International, where I, Amanda Stevens, and this week's guest host,
Joey.
Two writers who are political by necessity, cover some of the biggest international news stories dominating our news feeds from the last week. I'm Amanda Stevens, and this week we're tackling the ongoing legal battles between AI and copyright law, and also Budapest's incredible and illegal Pride Parade. But before all that, a hello and welcome to today's guest co-host,
Joey Chow.
Many of you guys probably know him as the voice of Beyond the Reefs, which is another one of our current event shows. So how are you, Joey?
I'm very well. I am a little nervous about sitting in for Hannah. I'm not as pretty, but thankfully this is a podcast/radio show.
You know what, Joey? I always have said that you have a face for radio.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So do
My mom said that too.
Oh, no. Oh, God. It's okay. We all have a face for radio. That's why we're here.
Well, hopefully not that much of a face for radio.
Well, if it's this radio, then we actually have quite a lot of videos. So I guess the paradox unwalks, unravels. Anyway, I'm going to move away from this because this is quickly getting away from me as well. We're going to start with the first topic, which actually I think is something that you'll find interesting because you and I have discussed this in the office from time to time, kind of just ongoing battles between AI and the way that it is changing how we understand many aspects of the world.
Let me preface before you say this by saying that this is going to be an interesting discussion because Amanda and I hold very different views.
I think so. I think that's what's going to be good about it. Yeah. So also because the AP presented a really interesting set of rulings that came out this past week about AI and the ways in which it is seemingly allowed to use copyright material to train on. While some news hailed it as a landmark moment for AI, this story by Matt O'Brien and Barbara Ortute presented two cases back-to-back in something that kind of left me frustrated, but also in a bit of a conundrum. So it started with this first case involving Meta's AI and a lawsuit by a coalition of 13 authors who alleged that Meta violated copyright laws by using their materials to train their AI without purchasing a license. Meta wanted the case thrown out, arguing basically that abiding by copyright law, the law, would slow down technological progress. The case was dismissed, however, not because the judge sided with Meta's arguments. Actually, he openly scoffed at their reasoning, saying, quote, "These products are expected to generate billions, even trillions of dollars for the companies that are developing them. If using copyright stuff is as necessary as companies say, they will figure out a way to compensate copyright holders for it," end quote. But rather because he said that the authors made the wrong arguments. In fact, the presiding judge, Vince Chabria, almost seemed to be inviting other authors to submit similar lawsuits and even alleged in the 40-page ruling that Meta and other AI companies had turned into serial copyright infringers. And instead of just me trying to describe it, I'm going to read the last little bit of his ruling, where he said, quote, "In the grand scheme of things, the consequences of this ruling are limited. This is not a class action, so the ruling only affects the rights of these 13 authors, not the countless others whose works Meta used to train its models," end quote. Joey, if you were on Meta's team, would you take this ruling as a win? And more broadly, how do you think that we should view this ruling?
I would definitely take this one as a win. I think it's a minimal price to pay for a company that is basically using someone else's IP to their advantage. And of course, it's hard to measure exactly how much it contributes to the overall intelligence of AI. When you take, say, the work of 13 authors, and you could argue that, it's only a fraction of the sum of human knowledge, and that's, probably a fraction of the money that they're going to make off it. But they were right in saying that you're basically profiting of someone else's creative work. Yeah. And you can afford to pay them a little bit.
That's a little bit of like the offense, right? Is like, because I also come at this as somebody who I really wanted to go into copyright law because I have a big chip on my shoulder about it. But when it comes to companies like Meta, you could have at least bought a copy of the book.
Yeah.
Wait, you have a lot of money.
Yeah.
You could or you could buy a license. People do that all the time.
Yeah.
So
you could easily sit down with all 13 of them and just say, let's strike a deal. A couple of $1,000 would be, I think, enough to just say, we just want to borrow your intelligence, praise them for their work at least, and say, this is how much we're willing to compensate. Are you okay with this?
And to your point about how useful is it? Because I also was kind of like, why would you want books? But when I was reading this article, the two authors also described the reporters said that the reason why books especially are useful are because it helps to teach machines how to basically like speak like people and how to put sentences together, because prose is language used as though you were speaking, not just like a spit out computer phrase. So we just started getting into this. But another issue at the heart of this trial was the fact that Meta had pirated copies of the books they used. And O'Brien and Ortude also detailed how using pirated work got another AI company, Anthropic, who we've talked about before, in trouble in a San Francisco court in the very same week, literally in the same courthouse.
Wow.
Now, the company was also in a court ruling over copyright infringement. However, the judge's ruling in Anthropic's case was much more decisive, saying that their chatbot, Claude, that its use of material was allowed under U.S. copyright law as it qualified as being, quote, quintessentially transformative, end quote. However, the company now has to go to trial again because it was proven during the course of that suit that they also used pirated libraries rather than paying for materials. Now, as a writer, I feel really strongly insulted by the implication that somebody could be using my work or anyone else's work to build something worth trillions, which you would see $0 of. Regretfully, though, I did think that there was an interesting argument in the AP article. Meta argued that their stealing the material shouldn't have mattered to how it was used or the books were used, because it would have just been the same as if they had used library copies. And this is actually something that some libraries are open to. And they've actually opened digital records for companies to train off of.
Okay.
The AP article also points out that this exact same logic is how Google was allowed to build their online book repository. So what do you think about this argument? In your mind, does it hold that pirating training materials should be the same or treated the same as using a library copy?
You know, despite being someone who uses AI quite often to go through some of the stuff that I write, to spell check or even to, refine or smooth out emails, articles that I generate, I still understand how it feels to write something and be proud of it.
Yeah.
And I think not even to take that away, but at least to have someone appreciate it is very important.
Or respect the work that went into it.
Yeah. So even if I'm using AI a lot, and I think where you and I agree differently. I think AI is the evolution of where the sum of human intelligence is eventually going to be. It's evolving and it's going to take form. The next form is AI, where this entity basically is it's a collection of everything that we've ever spoken, thought of, and written down, and it can now do all of that. But I think that evolution needs to come in slowly, and it's probably decades or centuries from now before it's completely evolved. But in the short term, the titans or the giants that these things step on, they deserve to be respected and at least compensated a little bit. These companies, like we said, they're making billions, if not more.
If not trillions.
To pirate the copy? You couldn't just buy the book for a couple of dollars? That's crazy.
I literally, when I was writing this, I don't remember when I started writing this article, but I literally had to sit with myself when I was reading that, because I was if a company used, just with this one argument of well, wouldn't it be the same as if we used a library book? And I was sitting there is the difference in my mind in why it's okay to use a library book just that the library bought the book? Or that, if I had a book, even if the library didn't buy it, I'd given it to the library to disseminate that information. Yeah. Right? So that's the whole, I guess it's consent, right? That's the one that I've given for people to read without having to pay.
Yeah.
But then, I don't know. I think it's just while I can respect the opinion of well, we could use a library, then I'm well, why didn't you? Why didn't you? Why do you decide to steal it? Actually, this isn't in this article or I didn't get too much into this because this was already getting very bloated. Yeah. But the fact that in the Meta case, at least, there wasn't too much in the Anthropic case on this one, but in the Meta case, at least, they used pirated materials, caused a huge ethics investigation within the company. It was a big scandal even within the Meta AI thing.
Oh, because they don't even agree with.
No, they don't. They're not even of one mind as a company into this. So I thought that was very interesting, and I feel because even I come out with a lot of really hot anti-AI takes here. I'm not really against AI. I'm just really against the way that people use AI to steal from people who are out there generating and creating content, whatever that may be. And we can be derisive of quote content, but that includes like news stories, that includes like art, that includes people's art portfolios, because if you don't post online, how are you going to reach anybody? Like that includes books, that includes videos, that includes like anything you've ever seen on YouTube.
Well, okay, so in terms of Anthropic's case, and it's funny, it's interesting what you shared, because there are people who donate their entire book collections to libraries, right? And I think it's okay to share human knowledge. I think it's okay to share the things that you have absorbed over the years and say, hey, I want everyone else to be able to read this. But where it's not okay is there are companies who are basically training this thing to replace the people who write it. When I read a book, I don't ever think that I can write as well as this author or can completely mimic their style that I can reproduce it. And why would I want to do that? You want to be your own writer, right? But this AI thing, it's being trained for free from your material to replace what you could do. And this could happen in that's the biggest problem, is that it's not even until you die. It's
actually happening right now, because while I was researching this, but just to give credit to that, there was a report in the UK that found entry-level jobs have dropped sharply.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody's now doing AI for that.
Yeah.
But now that's somewhat related, somewhat different, because like we don't necessarily know what exactly they are, but like it is having effects right now. Like people are being replaced by AI.
Yeah. So
anyway, I guess like I'm going to go from here into our last part, because I think that we're also kind of getting into that as well. And we're going to go to your perplexity.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Let's go.
I'm actually not sorry. I'm curious what you're going to think.
No,
I wanted to end this segment, this part, with a little meditation on the topic with you, a little bit more like expanding, which we've actually already done. But we've discussed two cases in AI versus IP theft, basically. But the actual number of court cases on the matter seems to be increasing by the day. A related AP article points out how in the Meta case, while it was dismissed, it was only won alongside other separate cases for, of course, Anthropic, but also Microsoft and ChatGPT/OpenAI. Just 2 weeks ago, Getty Images brought a lawsuit against Stability AI. The BBC sued Perplexity AI for inaccurately summarizing their reporting and affecting their credibility. Notably, it's not only the BBC, but it is the first time that the BBC has ever taken such action against a company like that. Okay. There's at least like 4 other news reporters that have also sued Perplexity specifically. And Disney and Universal are suing Midjourney over IP theft, like image theft. So this is getting back to what I was saying, where I often hear like individual artists or like small claims by like individual writers that AI stole their work dismissed by like a larger population as, well, you put it on the internet, what did you expect? But I think AI training in general is really bringing into focus the murky nature of intellectual property, or IP, like as a whole, because all of these things are those things we were saying, like you create it, you're proud of it, and so it's yours, but how do you protect that, right? So I guess, where do you personally see this issue as a whole headed in the near future? What do you think?
Well, first off, to answer your last question, I think how we've always done things as human is to have something happen and then make a sharp left turn and overcorrect it before it comes back to some sort of balance. So the thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis concept. So I think I can see that in the near future, there is going to be some laws, and it's probably going to be a bit more punitive than it should be in the short term. And that's a good thing to sort of halt the process a little bit and reflect a bit on what we're doing with AI before we can find a balance and a good way for it to grow alongside the creatives, who also agree with its direction. But now to unravel the different uses of AI, I think there are 2 major ways to use AI. One is to have it create. And I think that's a dangerous thing, to have it replace the jobs of creatives. And the other is to basically do research. The side where it does research is where I thrive in using AI. For example, before coming here, I was planning my trip to Vancouver, and there are days where we have to get things done, but there are days where we can take family trips, and you can actually ask ChatGPT that, hey, I want to plan a day trip starting from this point to where I want to go, say this mountain, and take a gondola. Now along the way, can you find me some pit stops, and then where should we be at what time, and where can I grab some good food? Can you find some reviews online? And then on the way back, we want to beat traffic. So before,
can you plan my day, basically?
AI is very good at doing those sort of things, and it can even give you like an hour by hour breakdown, and then at the end of the day, how much it would cost. It would give you like a full table to summarize everything. However, to do this kind of research means that it's reading articles online, articles that people researched on, and they probably spent hours, if not days, on these topics. Like, what's a good one-day trip in Vancouver?
Or like somebody's travel blog that's like my one day, my daily recommendations.
Yeah, so AI skims through these things with however they do it, their language models and whatnot, but they're not treating it as a creative piece of work, but the people who wrote it are treating it. I mean, they did a research, but to present it as a creative piece of work for them. So that's where it gets murky, is the presentation. People researched. Yes, everyone needs to do research, but on top of that research is a way to present it. And the way to present it is where the human factor really comes in.
Can I ask you a question then?
Yeah.
This is truly open because you and I have like discussed this, but never like at this depth. So how often do you double check your searches? Like the daily plan in Vancouver, did you double check what it told you?
Knowing that ChatGPT is still dangerously young, I always ask for sources, and when I have time, also for the important stuff, I will click into the sources and
you go double check the sources.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if the whole point of using AI is to be efficient, then doing that extra step is kind of contrary to what I was supposed to do. Like, like if I could have read these articles myself if I want to be specific, to be exact. But the whole point is to have a rough idea without having to go into each article.
Yeah.
So this is where like I'm tugging and pulling with myself, like, do I need to spend more time just to get specific? Or
right. Well, because this is also like this is also sort of where like I feel like murkily about AI, where I don't like the idea that these AI programs are pitched as a solution and like as a you can trust them kind of thing. Because, as you said, this is very new. And also because, like, for example, in the Perplexity article, they said that one of the reasons the BBC was suing is because Perplexity is a search engine, right? And people use it as a search engine. And not a lot of people check the sources, actually, because they trust it. In the same way that a lot of us now do with Google. You Google something, you see the first two results, and you're like, oh, that's good, right? But Perplexity has almost a 20% error rate.
That's very high.
It's 17%. It's almost 20% misquoting like news articles. So that's why the BBC is suing them, because they're inaccurately reporting facts, and they also don't always attribute sources correctly. And sometimes they misattribute sources, or they just don't cite them like at all. They'll be like, yeah, and I got this. And so that was why the BBC was suing them, along with a lot of other things. But I think that it gets kind of murky when we're talking about like, where does this go in the future for IP and other stuff. I think that there is something that's like AI becomes really dangerous when we use it to do tasks that are like require thinking or analyzation of your own. You know, like I don't think you can trust the machine to think for you. I do think we should be using AI for things like, even like you said for your trip, like aggregating ideas. That is such a tedious task. And so having something that's like, and we already use a lot of tools like that are like, can you find recommendations for me? Like these are things that AI should be doing. I think we should always be using AI to get rid of like the tedium of every day.
Yeah.
Or, not, and this isn't my quote, but I guess like I feel like we should be using AI to do my dishes and my laundry and not to write my music and like paint my pictures, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times, and especially like in these kind of cases, I really feel like we're being pitched to do the opposite.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay, AI can draw the pictures for you, so you don't have to. In these cases of like Midjourney, like it's already doing things like replacing concept artist jobs because movie studios are using them. And like it's, I think that it's gonna make everybody sit down and really reconsider what is intellectual property and ideas and the value of having human idea generators, and also like the value of what do we want AI to do. Like that would be my own answer to this, of like I think that's where I kind of see it going. But I don't know if it's going to go there anytime soon, because the people with the money don't really want us to be asking those questions.
No, okay. Yeah, if we're talking about profit and interest, private interest, then definitely. These companies don't want you to ask too many questions. But in terms of just everyday consumers and users of AI, I would say that on the creative side, no one would agree that AI should replace artists. Because even as if you watch a lot of YouTube or someone who enjoys the odd, cool pictures by artists around the world, you notice that it's starting to become a little difficult to distinguish real art from AI art. And I don't think anyone really likes that.
I mean, I think we're getting off topic in terms of like, this is another thing that I really want to discuss, but I hope that remains to be true. And I think that that's just going to have to be a larger discussion of like where does that start? You know, like where do we start with that conversation? Where do we end with that conversation? Where does the value of this person's creative work begin? But we have other stuff to get to. So we'll be right back after a quick break. Okay, so we're going to end on a lighter topic, at least for now, partially for my mental health and partially because I think that this is something that we should actually give a lot more press to if you haven't heard about it. So Monday, June 30th was the end of LGBTQ plus Pride Month for much of the world. And many cities hosted their big, colorful Pride parades. But one in particular stood out on my radar, and I'm wondering if you had heard about it, Joey. Do you know what I'm going to talk about? You saw the script for like 30 seconds right before this.
Not Taiwan's Pride Parade.
No, because our Pride Parade is in October.
Right.
So ours notably didn't happen because you would fry in the streets in June. Yeah. It's literally a health hazard to have that today right now.
And hygienic hazard as well.
Oh, God, yeah, it'd be terrible. Everyone's going to get sunburned.
Yeah.
So, okay, this one was Hungary's Pride Parade in Budapest.
Okay. Interesting.
I didn't expect to look into it. So I'm actually glad you didn't know about this because I would love to introduce this story to you. So this is in part because the government tried to ban it. I said that it was illegal at the top, and that was true. But in reality, because despite those threats, there was a historically high number of people who showed up in support, including many for the very first time. So this all starts with Hungary's current leader, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. If you're like me, you've heard the name, but you tend to forget about him because of these news cycles. So he's been accused of slowly diminishing Hungary's democratic systems and inching the country closer and closer to authoritarianism. Unfortunately, it's becoming a familiar narrative these days. As a part of that, he and his Conservative Party fast-tracked a bill for family values, which bans displays of homosexuality in front of minors. As a result, police banned Budapest's Pride Parade this year, about a week before it happened, setting the stage for a showdown between them and the city's progressive mayor, who immediately announced that it would be holding the Pride Parade anyway. Orban had actually tried to shut down the parade as early as February this year, announcing via a nationwide speech that the organizers, quote, need not bother this year, end quote, according to the BBC's Nick Thorpe. The following month, he passed a law restricting the freedom of assembly if it violated the Children's Protection Act, which is the anti-LGBTQ act. So the back and forth kept going until the Budapest mayor and a Pride spokesperson announced a bunch of events on the 26th for their Freedom Day, including a procession, which the mayor said, quote, is not Pride, end quote. He told the police, saying, quote, there will be no trucks, no dancers, no sexuality in any form. The purpose, he maintained, was to simply make the capital free. Police threatened to use facial recognition cameras to fine any attendees upwards of $500. So, Joey, you already know that the parade happened, but before I tell you what exactly happened, I wanted to ask, do you think that those measures would have stopped a parade in Taiwan?
These day and age, probably not. I mean, we already have a pretty strong support and backing for it. I think most people who get intimidated by these sort of measures are only because they don't know if there will be people who stand to support. But here in Taiwan, I don't think we need to worry about that.
I think Taiwan also has a very pro-protest movement.
Yeah, pro-protest.
Pro-protest. I think that's why I got tripped up, because I was like, that can't really be it, pro-protest. So while the organizers were expecting about 30,000 to 40,000 people to show up, the real numbers are now estimated to be around 200,000 people who showed up. And this is another one where I would really encourage listeners to check out the photos because they are incredible to see everybody packed into the parade route. So it wasn't all smooth sailing, according to Lili, Rutai, and Ashifa Kussan at The Guardian. The route did have to be changed after counter-protesters closed off the bridge on the original route. But the results were nonetheless stunning. Many people who showed up included Hungarians of all ages who were doing so to protest the government in general, members of the queer community, of course, and parents who wanted to show their children, quote, the reality of what Pride looks like. Some members from other countries came to show support, and even EU officials from Parliament, including from other countries, came. Okay. There is no word yet as to whether the fines will actually happen as of Wednesday. But I personally found the story to be a really bright spot in my Newsweek. It reflects what I see as a growing global trend, both towards acceptance of LGBTQ community and also for collective action against one of many governments increasingly trying to force conservative agendas on an unwilling public. So this is all new to you. Did you receive this story in the same way? And do you think that there are lessons to be learned from it?
Well, I think they're basically going down the same path that Taiwan was going a couple of decades ago, right? And it's a good thing. It's the only way forward because you can't tell people who to love. And they need to have freedom to express themselves. Although I think I might be right in saying that that region in Eastern Europe is rather conservative still.
That area of Europe is still largely conservative, but Budapest is not. I mean, it's big city syndrome where like that's where a lot of the progressives and like liberals tend to gather.
Yeah.
I also do think I would be remiss to not mention that like this is also happening at like a lot of people came here because they just hate the Orban government.
Well, but it also depends on how good they are at spinning that narrative of, protecting your freedom, protecting your family value, protecting your children. I mean, there are still people who believe that because you said there were
counter-protesters.
Closed the bridge, right?
Yes. Yeah. It was also really interesting to like read. I quoted the Guardian article there. That was a really interesting read because they kind of incorporated or conglomerated a lot of like on the street reporting. There was a lot of people who attended that were like, I'm here for the first time. There were people who were like, this is the first year I've ever been scared to come. And there were other people who were like, I was scared to come at first, but now that I see like there's so many people here, I feel really confident and I'm not scared anymore.
That's good.
So it was it's a really good read. It's a really interesting read. And it's something good that happened at the end of Pride Month. So.
Well, I mean, that's what oppression is about. I mean, looking from the outside in, it's always easy to say like, oh, will the cops really find every person who goes to the parade? But if you're on the ground, it takes bravery to show up because you don't really know what's going to happen.
You don't know. And again, like they were estimating a lot of people, but nobody could have guessed that it was going to be this big.
Right, exactly.
So, that's crazy and awesome. But anyway, that is all the time that we have for today. Thanks for joining, Joey. I hope that you had some fun.
I had fun. I love this.
It went faster than you expected.
It certainly did.
That's great. So, but anyway, like I said, we are out of time. So a quick reminder that you can find all of our referenced articles in the show notes for today's episode. I'm Amanda Stevens, joined this week by special guest
Joey Chap.
And thanks for joining us on air today. Tune in tomorrow for more programs by Radio Taiwan International. And in the meantime, remember to stop scrolling and touch grass. We'll see you next week. You're listening to Radio Taiwan International.